Hey guys, Mark here. Just thought I'd do another quick off the cuff. Today I will be talking about the NHS. So, most of you Britishers out there will know about the NHS and probably have experience. And for those abroad, the NHS is our socialist national health care system, or national health system. So, the history of the NHS, very briefly. Towards the end of World War II, Winston Churchill was voted out in a landslide election for I think it was the Labour Party, but it was the left-wing party at the time. It was sort of headed by a variety of trade unionists and coal miners and whatnot. So back then it was probably more of a realistic left-wing party compared to what we have now, which we can see by the figures. 68% of Labour voters are middle class. 66% of Conservative voters are working class. But yeah, so back then, they obviously they made a lot of promises to the people that were coming out of the war. You know, there were a lot of things damaged, infrastructure, many people's lives lost, many men's lives lost, especially because obviously we had 2 wars in 26 years. Foolish. So, yeah, it was a difficult situation, and, at the time, the left were obviously saying, we shall give you many golden geese and many golden eggs. And I guess people were like, okay, cool. So I think it was Clement Attlee was the Prime Minister at the time, and there was a guy whose name I can't pronounce nor remember, but I think it was something like, I always want to say Anakin, like Anakin Sky. I think it's Anurin or Ananarin Bevan. Strange name combo, but we'll go with it. And in his own words, he couldn't convince people of the actual budgets, so what he did was just, he said, I filled their mouths with gold. So he basically paid off a bunch of doctors and ministers to allow him to try this big sort of socialist healthcare system. And to be fair, it has not turned out utterly horrendously. I will definitely say that. Most people get their broken bones fixed, they get their cancer treatment, they get their scans. So, I'm not going to be a sort of militant anti-NHS person. So yeah, it then almost instantly became what Americans, I guess, would call a political football. So, at every election cycle, and we still see it now, the more sort of socialist-sided parties or socialist-focused parties will say, they're going to take the NHS away from you. And the other people are like, no, we're not. We're going to increase the spending in the NHS. And it just goes back and forth and back and forth. So that makes it quite difficult, because if you ever actually do want to change it significantly, like if you do want NHS reform, it's almost impossible, because either party doesn't want to be the party that costs people their grandparents' lives. And it's all very well saying, yeah, but you could save your grandparents' lives if you had a different type of... Okay, fine, but people haven't seen that. So it's very difficult to make people trust something that they have not yet seen. It's much easier to make them fearful of taking away things that they have seen, and that their parents have seen, and their grandparents have seen, and that they've relied on for generations. So one thing I would say about the NHS is it is very expensive. It's, I believe, the single largest employer in the UK. I think over 1 million people. It's the largest purchaser, it's the largest single purchaser of medication in the world, which can obviously bring benefits with it. But yeah, it's expensive. I think it's 130 billion last year, and our tiny little island the size of Florida and a half is we're only like 67 million, I think 68 million. And so with that, you have to fund it. And so at times that has led to cuts from other public services, much to the Labour's annoyance. But I guess, you've got to find it somewhere. The other place they find it are various taxes and duties. So in the UK, income tax, everybody pays income tax. If you've got a more right-wing party in like the Conservatives, you're probably paying around 18%, unless you're earning over, I don't know, £50,000-60,000, which is about $80,000. If you've got a more left-wing party, and you only start paying that, by the way, if you're earning above 15,000 or £12,600. If you've got a left-wing party, you're more likely to be paying about 25%, and it will start right from about £6,000. So it's bizarrely, they actually tax the working class a lot more. I guess they just tax everyone a lot more, and that includes the working class. So yeah. And then you've got other costs like the fuel duty, although it's done reasonably well in the UK to keep it stable. So like our fuel has basically cost the same plus or minus 25% for the last 15 years, probably 15 years. When Trump was in, it was around, and it's like 90% duty as well, which is my point. When Donald Trump was in, I think it was around $6.50 a gallon over here, just doing the quick conversions. And then now, obviously, under the Biden administration, they've sort of gone back to the old petrodollar thing of getting the Middle East to provide the energy and the oil and stuff, as long as everybody has to buy it in USD. And that meant that they had to sort of cut off some of the homegrown oil creation fields and whatnot. And that pushed the price of oil up along with some other factors as well. And so petrol over here now, gasoline, is around $10 a gallon. I know some of you are probably fainting or thinking that can't be true. Yeah, it's true. It's £1.38 a litre. So yeah, it was about $9.50 or $10 a gallon. And then obviously they also do things which, in my opinion, are fairly sensible. So with smokers are most likely going to use the hospital more than others. So they put a lot of duty on cigarettes. So cigarettes are like £11.50, £12, which is about $15 for a packet of 17. So yeah, it's not cheap to have an NHS. And it's getting a lot more expensive. With the advances in healthcare techniques that we have had over the last 20 years, like with scanning and various sort of big tech techniques, it's just become a lot more expensive, and so that has added again to the financial, obviously the financial costs, as well as an increase in population, as well as, we do have an immigrant issue with obviously it's very difficult to know how much you need to fund something with if you don't know how many people you're actually funding it for. Like if you know you've got 20 people, then you can just say, okay, well, we'll do like £1,000 per person. But then if you've actually got 25 people, then that kind of screws things up. One of the things that we tend to have a lot over here is this sort of massive, like, sycophantic love of the NHS.
What would Britain be like today without the National Health Service? Its existence is beyond political debate. Britain's health depends on it. But in the 6 months before it opened its doors 60 years ago, it looked as though it might never take its first breath.
People were so proud of it, and they were so proud that they picked Manchester. It was like a wedding. People went out and, like the consultants, they bought the best clothes and whatnot. And the matron had a new uniform, and the nurses their aprons were starched to the last. And if he missed anybody out, he went back to shake hands with them. They couldn't believe that a minister could behave as normal as he did. Everybody was waving banners and thought that the Lord had come nearly, that the Lord had come nearly, the Lord had come nearly.
And I get it, it's Florence Nightingale syndrome, people that look after you tend to look up to them as sort of demigods. But it also ends up creating lies, and people use it for their side only, and maybe I'm being guilty of that. I hope I'm not. Like we saw recently when Black Lives Matter started up, and maybe just before that, they were saying that there were a lot of adverts where it was like, if these people weren't here, you wouldn't have an NHS. And then they showed pictures of various people from sort of non-Northwestern European backgrounds, But actually, the truth is that in the whole of the NHS, only 13% of people aren't British. So yeah, it's not exactly made up of mostly non-Brits. But I don't really care about that. But I just thought I'd add that. So yeah, the issues that we are having more and more, besides people using it as a political football, is that we get a lot of requested pay rises. Now, in my opinion, the NHS is already funded. The NHS wages are already exceptional. Like, I understand if you're going to be a private doctor or specialist, sometimes you can earn more going to a private clinic or even a different country. Like, from what I hear, a lot of British doctors will just go to America. And I get that. But if you're not a doctor, if you're one of the sort of levels underneath, so maybe you're somebody that specialises in, I don't know, feet or children or scanning or whatever, so you're sort of higher than a nurse, but you're lower than a doctor, you can be earning 45, 50 grand, which is $70,000, $75,000. But that is not just, that's not the only good thing. You can get, if you've been in there for a few years, you can get numerous days off a year. I mean, an average job, you'll probably get 14, 16, 18 days off a year. You can get up to like 50 or 58 or something in the NHS. You also have a monstrous pension. Monstrous. I can't, the pension figures I've seen just for nurses are massive. So it's not a bad idea to work for the NHS. But yeah, I mean, even if you're a nurse, like a friend of mine, his missus is 23, she's earning £36,000 a year. It's about $50,000 a year. 23, left school at 16. And then obviously she's got her days off, she's got her pensions, and they do some schemes at the end where you can like work 2 days a year and 2 days a week, sorry, and get like chunks of your pension as well. So you're essentially still earning your full-time wage. Like, there is just so much money in it, for good or bad. Now, that's great. The only issue is, because it's a socialist setup, so there is no one to look to. Like, you can't look at the whites of the guy's eyes that is funding the business, that is making the decisions, whose family and his whole being hinges on how well you do your job and whether you're worthy of every pound and stuff like that. That's the biggest problem with the NHS. People just don't really think of it like that because it has been for so long a state institution rather than a business. And, you know, we've now got laws where it's almost impossible to fire people, and you hear about wards where 70% of the people on the wards are just slacking. They'll call in sick. They'll just... And it's very difficult, like I said, it's very difficult to get rid of people. And again and again and again, they're asking for money. And that is why I'm talking about it today, because despite the fact that they get periodic pay rises anyway, they also had a big unexpected pay rise 2.5 years ago. They thought that during a global depression, it would be a good time to take to the streets and ask for a 15% pay rise. Yeah. So, no, I disagree with that. I think you're insane. I think you are already some of the luckiest people in the UK. I think you get paid very well. I'm not begrudging you that, but there are better times than a global depression when many people have lost their jobs. There's a better time to ask for a pay rise. Some of them are saying they're just doing the big ask, so they're asking for 15, but what they really want is 5 or 3 or whatever. That's fine as well, I get it, tactics. But just the asking for extraordinary pay rises, so on top of pay rises, to me, just seems like I don't know, it just seems a little bit selfish, dare I say. I know a lot of people in the NHS, so it's not like I am being cruel or anything like that. I think many of them would agree with everything I'm saying. But you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you, are you? So, yeah, I just think that when we've just seen the fastest rise in inflation in 29 years, the fastest rise in inflation in 29 years we saw in the last 6 months. So things might seem okay, especially, I mean, and listen, the UK is just as guilty as America, but from what I've read and what I've seen in America, there's this sort of feeling that things are reasonably okay because money is pouring in from the government via the Federal Reserve. Lots of money printing to make people think it's okay. But, you know, if you pour money into a system where the money wasn't created, you know, via something, it's very, very difficult to make people realize how tough things actually are, or the real state of affairs. So, yeah, I have blabbered on for a long time. Let me know what you think. I get it. If you don't ask, you won't get. But if you're already getting a really good deal... and also, I will just say one last thing. A lot of people over here at the moment, there's this big sort of thing about how they're superheroes and da-da-da-da. Look, I really appreciate all the key workers, I do. You know, if you had to lock down in the first place, then it's good that some people could, you know, empty your bins and be there in the hospitals, and be there in the shops, and be there to do emergency plumbing, all that stuff. I really do appreciate that. But I also think there's an awful lot of people that lost their businesses that they had worked their entire lives to create. And for you to come and be like, you know, bow down, I want a pay rise because I've done my job like I normally would have done anyway. Like, how does that make sense? Like, like I said, there are people that have lost everything that they've been working for 10, 15, 30, 40 years. It's not that special to just be doing the job that you're being paid handsomely to do. So thank you, but just try and think of other people as well. Anyway, let me know what you think. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.
These doctors have become a symbol of the state.